I never thought I'd find myself in this position, but here I am, pouring my soul out to anyone who might listen. My name is Mark, and my life was turned upside down when I discovered my wife, Jessica, was having an affair. We'd been married for 8 years, and like any couple, we had our ups and downs, but I never imagined she would betray me in such a profound way. From the outside, we seemed like the perfect couple. I was a high school teacher, and she was a successful marketing manager. We lived in a cozy little suburban house with a white picket fence, and we had a golden retriever named Max. We laughed, we fought, we shared dreams of having kids. Everything seemed picture perfect, or at least it did until things started to change. It was subtle at first. Jessica became more distant. She started working late more often, claiming she was swamped with projects. I'd get home from work, and the house would be dark, just the soft hum of the fridge breaking the silence. I tried to brush it off, thinking she was just stressed, but then little things began to pile up. She started dressing differently, wearing clothes that were tighter and more revealing, and she began spending more time on her appearance. It was like she was trying to impress someone. I noticed a change in her behavior too. She was more irritable, snapping at me over small things. "You left the toilet seat up again, Mark." She'd huff, rolling her eyes as if I had just committed a capital crime. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something crucial, but what could it be? One evening I came home early, planning to surprise her with dinner. As I walked into the house, I was hit with an unsettling feeling. The living room was a mess, and there were signs that someone had been there, but she was. I called out for her, but no answer. Then I saw her phone lying on the kitchen counter. Against my better judgment, I picked it up. I felt guilty, but curiosity gnawed at me. I unlocked it with her thumbprint. After all, it's not like she had a lock on it for privacy. As I scrolled through her messages, my heart sank. There it was, a thread of messages with someone named Jake. A name I didn't recognize. The messages were flirty at first, but then they turned explicit. They spoke about sneaking away, meeting after work, and even referenced a hotel. I couldn't breathe. The room felt like it was closing in on me. The betrayal coursed through my veins like ice. I dropped the phone back on the counter, my hands trembling. I had to confront her. There was no way I could let her walk in and pretend that everything was fine. When Jessica finally came home, I could tell she was caught off guard by my expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, feigning innocence. The look in her eyes told me she knew something was off, but she wasn't ready to admit it. "Who's Jake?" I asked, my voice steady but my insides twisted in knots. The color drained from her face, and for a brief moment I saw genuine fear in her eyes. "What are you talking about?" she replied, but I could see the cracks forming. I didn't give her a chance to lie. I pulled up the messages on her phone and shoved it in her face. "Don't even try to deny it, Jess." Her reaction broke my heart. She started to cry, claiming it was a mistake that I didn't understand. "It didn't mean anything, Mark. I was just feeling lost and he was there. I didn't know how to talk to you." I stood there, feeling my world shatter around me. How could she do this? All those nights she spent working late suddenly made sense, and the pain of her betrayal was overwhelming. I felt anger bubbling up inside, but more than that, I felt a deep sadness creeping in. It was one of those moments in life that you can't quite prepare yourself for, and I knew I had to process everything that had just crashed into my reality. The woman I loved had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and now it was time for me to figure out what came next. After Jessica's confession, a whirlwind of emotions consumed me. I was angry, hurt, confused, and utterly betrayed. I felt like I was drifting in an ocean of despair, and every wave that crashed over me brought a new pang of realization. This was my life we were talking about, my marriage, and it felt like it was all slipping away. That night I barely slept. I tossed and turned, replaying every moment I could think of, every sweet word she had said, and the intimate moments we had shared. It all felt like a lie now, coated with the stench of her infidelity. I wanted to confront her again, to yell and scream, but I also didn't want to feed into her theatrics. I knew better than to let her manipulate me with tears and excuse-making. So I held my tongue and processed everything quietly. The following days were a blur. Jessica tried to talk to me, to explain herself, to tell me how much she loved me and how she was just confused. She told me that Jake was just a friend who was there to listen when she felt alone. But the more she talked, the more it sounded like a rehearsed script. Her words felt hollow, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was more concerned about saving her own skin than genuinely apologizing for what she'd done. I went back to work, but my mind was elsewhere. My students noticed my distraction. The cheerful banter I usually shared with them was replaced with a distracted demeanor. My best friend Ryan could see that something was wrong. He was one of the few people I trusted, and when he pressed me for the truth, I finally broke down. I told him everything, from the stifling feeling of betrayal to the details of the messages I had read. "Dude, you have to confront this guy," Ryan said, his voice laced with anger. "There's no way you can just let them get away with this." I'd thought about it. The idea of finding Jake, the plastic surgeon who had apparently stolen my wife's heart, sent a surge of adrenaline through me. But it was also terrifying. I didn't want to become some cliché husband seeking revenge, but the thought of him parading around with my wife while I was left to pick up the pieces made my blood boil. After a week of unease and fighting with my emotions, I decided to take action. I wanted to hurt him the way he had hurt me. I began to dig into Jake's life, using social media and a bit of online sleuthing. His practice wasn't far from where we lived, and he had a decent following on Instagram, showcasing all these before and after transformations of his patients. The more I looked into him, the more I realized that he thrived on his reputation as a top-tier plastic surgeon. This was good information. I would use it. I found out that he had recently been in the news for a few incredible surgeries that had gone wrong. I couldn't help but think that if I played my cards right, I could expose him for what he truly was. A man who was willing to ruin marriages and self-esteems for his own personal gain. It would be my way of striking back, ensuring that Jessica would never feel good about herself again, that she would always remember the consequences of her actions. I spent hours drafting an anonymous letter detailing the affairs of his practice, highlighting the complaints I had found online, and questioning the ethical standards he claimed to uphold. It was not just about Jessica anymore. It was about showing him that his actions have repercussions. I made sure to include every detail that would make it impossible for him to gloss over the truth. I was meticulous, and the more I crafted the letter, the more empowered I felt. Once I was satisfied, I sent it off to the medical board with a feeling of exhilaration. I could already picture the panic on Jessica's face if she ever found out what I was up to. I knew she was still trying to reach out, trying to mend things, but my heart was too bruised to even entertain the idea of reconciliation. I wanted her to see the consequences of her actions, to understand the gravity of what she had done. Over the next few weeks, things began to unfold. I watched from afar as Jake's life started to slide into chaos. I heard whispers about investigations, and slowly the rumors began to surface. I could see Jessica growing anxious, asking me if I'd heard anything about his practice, her voice trembling with uncertainty. I couldn't help but smirk at her discomfort. She was receiving a taste of her own medicine, feeling insecure and unsure about the man she had chosen over me. I found a sick sense of satisfaction in knowing that I had a hand in his downfall. I was no longer the victim. I had become the architect of a carefully crafted plan that would shatter her illusions. The emotional roller coaster I had endured transformed into a chilling determination to ensure that neither of them could just walk away unscathed. As weeks passed and the chaos surrounding Jake's practice unfolded, I found myself navigating an emotional landscape I never expected to traverse. I was no longer just the betrayed husband. I had taken on a new role as the puppeteer, pulling strings from the shadows. Each day brought new revelations about Jake's mounting troubles, and I watched as Jessica's confidence began to erode. It was intoxicating, seeing her unease, the cracks in her facade widening with each passing day. She tried to engage me more, seeking my attention with desperate attempts at normalcy. "Want to watch a movie tonight?" she asked, or "How about dinner at that Italian place we love?" But I could see right through her. The carefree tone of her voice felt forced, a thin veil over a growing anxiety that gnawed at her. I didn't respond to her overtures. Instead, I turned the tables and began to pull away, creating a chasm between us that felt deeper than ever. I started spending more time with Ryan, going out for drinks and venting about everything I was feeling. One evening, as we sat in our usual spot at the bar, I looked at him and realized just how much I had changed. "I've become a monster, haven't I?" I admitted, swirling my drink. "I should just let it all go." Ryan looked at me, his eyes narrowing slightly. "You're not a monster, Mark. You've been wronged, but where does it end? Wouldn't it be better to confront her, to face this head-on?" I nodded but didn't have an answer. Confronting Jessica felt daunting. I was still wrestling with my own emotions, battling the anger that fueled my revenge. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, yet a small part of me missed the woman I once loved, the woman who had stood by me during tough times. The pull between revenge and reconciliation was tearing me apart. Then came the moment that forced my hand. One Friday evening, I received a call from Ryan while I was at home, mindlessly watching TV. "Dude, you need to turn on the news. They're talking about Jake. It's bad." My heart raced as I flipped on the television, and there it was, a news anchor detailing the investigation into Jake's practice. Allegations of malpractice, patients coming forward with complaints about botched surgeries, and whispers of a potential licensing revocation. I felt a rush of satisfaction and dread all at once. I had done that, my letter had triggered this storm. Then came the inevitable. Jessica, who had been glued to her phone throughout the broadcast, finally broke down. "Mark, how could this happen?" Her voice trembled as she gripped the couch, her eyes wide with panic. "They're saying he might lose his license. I can't believe this." I watched her with an almost detached curiosity. The way her face twisted in horror was a stark reminder of the betrayal she had inflicted on me. "Maybe you should reach out to him, Jess. He sounds like he needs support." My words dripped with sarcasm, but I kept my expression neutral. She shot me a confused look, and for a brief moment I felt a flicker of guilt. But it faded quickly as I reminded myself of all that I had lost, all that she had taken from me. "No, no, no, this is right," she insisted, her voice rising in pitch. "He's a good surgeon, Mark. He wouldn't do this intentionally." I couldn't help but scoff. "You really think he's a good guy? He was happy to ruin our marriage for a cheap thrill. What makes you think he cares about anyone but himself?" Her eyes filled with tears, and the mask of confidence she had worn for so long began to crack. I thought I could talk to him about our problems. I was confused. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Her excuses felt weak, and I could see she was starting to panic. This was my moment to confront her about everything. "You didn't mean to cheat on me, Jess. You didn't mean to betray my trust. You didn't mean to gamble with our marriage." She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, she sobbed, her body shaking as she collapsed onto the couch. "I'm sorry, Mark. I really am. I messed up. Please, can't we just try to move past this?" I stood there, heart pounding, caught in a battle between wanting to comfort her and the overwhelming urge to let her suffer the consequences of her actions. "You need to understand, Jessica. This isn't something I can just forgive. You broke my trust, and I don't know if I can ever get it back." The gravity of my words hung in the air, and I could see realization dawning on her. She had pushed too far, and I had changed in ways she hadn't anticipated. In that moment, I realized that this wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about me reclaiming my power, about understanding my worth beyond the betrayal. I had a choice to make. I could either work through this with her or walk away entirely. But either way, I wouldn't be the same man who had simply stood by and accepted her infidelity. With that clarity came a newfound strength. I could feel it coursing through me. This wasn't just about punishing her. It was about finding my own path forward, whatever that may be. It felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to leap into the unknown, and I wasn't sure where I'd land. The days that followed were filled with a mix of tension and uncertainty. Jessica had retreated into herself, her usual bravado replaced by a haunting vulnerability. I noticed her sitting on the couch for hours, staring blankly at the TV without really watching, her phone buzzing with messages she was too afraid to respond to. Despite the chaos I had set in motion, I didn't feel triumphant. Instead, I felt a strange mixture of guilt and relief, like I was both the villain and the hero of this story. We had a few tense conversations where she tried to plead her case, desperate to convince me that it was just a phase, just a mistake. I love you, Mark. I made a terrible choice, but I want to fix this. Can't we go to therapy? I'll do anything, she begged, her voice trembling. Part of me wanted to give in, to revisit the life we had built together. But every time I looked at her, I was reminded of the pain she had caused. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was staring at a stranger. The woman I thought I knew had shattered my trust, and I was left to pick up the pieces. After a week of her begging for forgiveness, I decided to confront her once more. I couldn't keep playing this game of emotional chicken. I invited her to sit down with me, a serious expression on my face. Jess, we need to talk about where we go from here, I said, my tone even. I can't pretend that everything is okay. I need to know if you're truly committed to repairing what's been broken. She nodded, her eyes wide and fearful, as if she was bracing for a storm. I am, Mark, I swear. I'll do anything to make things right. I just need you to trust me again. Trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I want to understand what drew you to Jake in the first place. What was missing in our marriage that made you seek comfort in someone else? Her face fell, and I watched as her defenses crumbled. I guess I felt lonely. I thought I could handle it, that it was just a fling and wouldn't mean anything. I didn't realize how much I needed to talk to you, to communicate. I processed her words, and while part of me wanted to accept her explanation, another part felt that words were just that, words. Loneliness doesn't excuse infidelity, Jess. You chose to betray me instead of discussing our issues. That's what hurts the most. The silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken truths. Jessica's eyes filled with tears, and I felt a pang of sympathy, but it was overshadowed by my own pain. I don't know if I can forgive you, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. And I don't want to go through the motions if we're not truly committed to working on this together. Her face crumpled, and for a moment I felt a flicker of the affection I had once held for her. I get it. I'm so sorry for what I've done. I just want to fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll even quit my job and find something new if it means you'll consider giving me another chance. Her desperation was palpable, and I was struck by the depth of her regret. But I couldn't ignore the fact that she had used another man to fill a void in her life. A void I had wanted to help her with. You don't have to quit your job, Jess, but I think we both need to take a step back and seriously evaluate if we can move past this. As I said those words, I realized I wasn't just referring to our relationship. I was also talking about myself. I needed to find clarity in my own feelings, to understand what I truly wanted moving forward. It was time to take a break from the emotional turmoil and reevaluate everything. In the days that followed, I took space to think. I started journaling my thoughts, pouring out my feelings onto the page. It was both cathartic and illuminating. Writing allowed me to articulate my pain, my anger, and my confusion in a way that felt safe. I reflected on our relationship, the good and the bad, and wrestled with my lingering feelings for her. I also spent more time with Ryan, who encouraged me to think about my own happiness. You have to look out for yourself, Mark. You deserve to be with someone who respects you, who values you, he said one evening, leaning back in his chair as we drank beers on his porch. If Jessica can't give you that, maybe it's time to let her go. Those words echoed in my mind, and slowly I began to accept that if I were to move forward, I had to prioritize my own well-being. I couldn't allow myself to be tethered to a past that was filled with betrayal. Maybe it was time to make a hard choice, whether it meant letting go or finding a way to rebuild. Then, one evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, a thought struck me. What if I took a more proactive approach to figuring out the future? What if I sought out a therapist myself, someone who could help me navigate the emotional fallout of this situation? I realized that regardless of whether I stayed with Jessica or not, I needed guidance to help me heal. That decision felt empowering. I began to explore local therapists online, reading their bios and reviews. I settled on one who specialized in relationships and infidelity, and I scheduled an appointment for later that week. I felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could find a way through this darkness. As I moved forward with my plans for therapy, I also noticed Jessica's behavior shifting. She had started attending therapy sessions of her own without my prompting. I couldn't help but feel a mix of frustration and admiration. I wanted her to seek help for herself, but at the same time, I wondered if it was too little, too late. Our paths seemed to diverge, and I realized that our journey together had become murky at best. While I was focused on my healing, she was still clinging to the hope of rebuilding what we once had. It was clear that we were in two different places emotionally, and I couldn't deny the reality of that divide anymore. The question now was whether we could find a way to bridge that gap or if this was simply the end of our story. As I continued my therapy journey, I hoped to emerge with clarity about our future, whatever that might hold. As I delved deeper into therapy, I found it to be a sanctuary, a space where I could voice my feelings without judgment. My therapist, Dr. Jensen, was perceptive and patient, guiding me through the tangled web of emotions I was feeling. She helped me process the betrayal, the anger, and the underlying sadness that came with losing the person I thought I knew. Mark, it's important to remember that healing takes time, she told me during one of our sessions. You've been through a significant trauma, and it's okay to feel lost. What's crucial is how you choose to navigate this journey. Those words resonated with me, and I began to embrace the idea that there was no rush to make a definitive decision about my marriage. I had spent so long feeling like I had to act quickly, to either forgive Jessica or sever ties completely. But now, I understood the value of taking a step back and truly reflecting on my desires and needs. Meanwhile, Jessica had started therapy on her own, and I could see slight changes in her demeanor. She was more introspective, taking responsibility for her actions instead of deflecting or making excuses. Yet despite her efforts, there was still a lingering fear that she was more focused on saving our marriage than on genuinely understanding why she had stepped outside of it in the first place. One evening, she broached the topic, again her voice hesitating as she approached me. I've been thinking about what you said about moving forward. I really want to make this work, Mark. I'm committed to doing the work to understand why I did what I did. I scrutinized her face, searching for sincerity. I want you to do that, Jess. But it's not just about our marriage, it's about you finding yourself again, understanding why you chose to cheat instead of talking to me. Her eyes welled with tears and she nodded. I know, I see that now. I was so wrapped up in my own insecurities that I didn't even realize how I was hurting you. As we talked, I could feel the old familiarity creeping back in, but I couldn't shake the doubt that lingered. Would she be able to truly change? Would she be able to confront her own demons instead of running from them? My heart yearned for the connection we had once shared, but the scars from her betrayal were still fresh. The weeks turned into months, and I continued my therapy. I began to rediscover parts of myself that I had neglected, hobbies I had abandoned, and friendships I had let slip away. I started running again, something I had loved before life had consumed me. Each mile felt like a small victory, a physical manifestation of my emotional progress. I felt stronger, more grounded, and more in control of my own narrative. As Jessica and I navigated our new reality, I found myself grappling with the question of whether we could rebuild our relationship. We had both changed. I had grown more resilient, while she seemed to be genuinely trying to confront her past mistakes. But could that work? Could we merge our individual journeys into something whole again? One night, I sat down with her to have a serious conversation. Jess, I've been doing a lot of thinking. I want to know if you're ready to take a serious look at our future together. I need to know if you recognize the damage that has been done, both to our relationship and to us as individuals. Her gaze was steady and I could see the determination in her eyes. I do, Mark. I'm willing to put in the work. I know it won't be easy and I don't expect you to forget. But I want to try. I want us to find a way back to each other. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words wash over me. I want that too, Jess, but we can't rush it. I need to see true change. We both need to be committed not just to our marriage, but to ourselves. That night opened a door to deeper conversations and more honest exchanges. We began to share our vulnerabilities with each other, discussing our fears and dreams in a way we hadn't done in years. It felt refreshing and terrifying all at once. With each revelation, I could see us slowly rebuilding the bridge that had once connected us. Yet, as we explored this new chapter together, I couldn't shake the feeling that my decision about our future was still looming over us, an unresolved question that demanded an answer. I had to come to terms with the idea that sometimes love isn't enough to mend what has been broken. One afternoon, as I was out for a run, I thought about all of the progress I had made, how I had risen from the ashes of betrayal, and I realized that I was no longer the same man who had walked into the storm of infidelity. I had found my strength, my voice, and my worth. And as I ran, I understood that whether I chose to stay with Jessica or to walk away, I had the power to create the life that I wanted. When I returned home, I found Jessica in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. She looked up and smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. But I also knew I had to be honest with her. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," I said, taking a deep breath. "I think we're on the right path, but I need more time to figure out what I truly want." She paused, her smile fading slightly. "I understand, Mark. I just want you to know that I'm here, ready to work on this with you, whenever you're ready." As I stood there, watching her, I realized that this journey wasn't just about us anymore. It was about finding clarity within myself. I owed it to myself to explore every facet of my emotions and to decide how I wanted my story to unfold, whether it included Jessica or not. And in that moment, I felt a sense of empowerment that I hadn't felt in a long time. Whatever happened next, I was ready to face it head on. As the weeks rolled into months, the emotional landscape we had forged began to feel a bit more stable. Jessica and I were no longer dancing around the elephant in the room. Instead, we were actively participating in the healing process. It was a strange tension, the kind where you're both hopeful yet still wary, where every laugh or shared moment felt tinged with the shadow of what had come before. I continued to attend therapy regularly, utilizing each session to dissect my feelings and explore what I wanted from life. Dr. Jensen helped me navigate the complexities of love, betrayal, and self-worth. Healing is not linear, Mark. Some days you'll feel like you're moving forward, and other days you might take a step back. The important thing is to honor where you are in that process, she advised one day. I took those words to heart. Each day felt like a new chapter, filled with its own challenges and victories. The more I focused on myself, the more clarity I gained about my feelings for Jessica. There were days when I felt a flicker of love, reminiscent of what we once had. Other days I would be engulfed in doubt, questioning if I could ever fully trust her again. One evening, as we were relaxing on the couch, I turned to her. "Jess, if we're going to make this work, we need to have honest conversations about expectations. I need to know what you want from us." Her expression turned serious and she nodded thoughtfully. "I want us to be stronger than we were before. I want to continue growing, both as individuals and as a couple. I want to rebuild that trust. I know it'll take time, but I'm committed to doing the work." Listening to her earnestness, I felt a mix of hope and apprehension. "I want that too, but it's going to require transparency from both of us. I need to know that you're happy and engaged in this process, not just out of guilt or fear of losing me." "I promise, Mark, I'm fully invested," she said, her eyes earnest. As we continued to communicate openly, a strange, tentative companionship began to emerge. We started to enjoy simple things again, cooking together, sharing stories about our day, and even laughing. It felt good to reconnect on those levels, but still, there was a lingering anxiety about the future. Then came the day when I received an unexpected message. It was from Jake. "Mark, I know we don't know each other, but I need to reach out. I've heard things about my practice, and I wanted to apologize for what happened between you and Jessica. I know I've caused a lot of pain, and I'm truly sorry." The message hit me like a brick. I hadn't thought about him in weeks, but suddenly there he was, a reminder of everything I had been through. My initial instinct was to lash out, to respond with anger, but I took a step back. I had grown so much since that initial confrontation, and I didn't want to give him the power to drag me back into that place of rage. Instead, I typed out a simple response. "Thank you for reaching out. I hope you can find a way to make amends with your own life." I hit send, feeling a surprising weight lift off my shoulders. It was a moment of closure, one chapter ending while another began. As summer approached, Jessica and I decided to take a weekend trip to a cabin in the woods. We had agreed that a change of scenery might help us reconnect without the distractions of daily life. The trip was filled with laughter, long walks, and moments of reflection. I noticed a lightness in my heart that had been absent for so long. One evening, as we sat by the fire, I turned to her, feeling an urge to be more vulnerable. You know, seeing us now, I can't help but feel a mix of emotions. I see the effort you're putting in, and I want you to know that I appreciate it, but I also need to be clear that I'm not just going to forget what happened. She nodded, her gaze steady. I wouldn't expect you to. I have to earn your trust back, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I want you to feel safe with me again. In that moment, I realized that while our journey had been marred by betrayal, it was also a journey of growth. We were not the same people who had entered this storm. We were evolving, adapting, and learning to communicate, something we had desperately needed for years. On our last night at the cabin, as we gazed into the flickering flames, I took her hand. Jess, I don't know what the future holds for us, but I'm willing to explore it together. We can't erase the past, but we can create something new. I'm open to seeing where this leads. Tears filled her eyes and she squeezed my hand tightly. Thank you for being open to this, Mark. I promise I'll keep working on myself and on us. As I sat there, surrounded by the warmth of the fire and the woman I had fought so hard to understand, I felt a flicker of hope. It wasn't a guarantee of success, but it was a foundation on which we could build. In the end, I realized that I had learned the importance of communication, self-worth, and the understanding that healing is an ongoing journey. No matter where this path led, I was ready to embrace it, one step at a time. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I would meet them with open eyes and an open heart, knowing that I had the strength to create a life that was true to me.